This is lecture 20. Last time we talked about the election of 1800 and the emerging hostility between the Vice President, Aaron Burr, and the former Secretary of the Treasury, Alexander Hamilton. Before we get into the duel, I want to talk about what we call the culture of honor that is very much a part of the young republic. Let me give you a little more context for this discussion. We have here a shift beginning whereby we're moving from a politics of deference, as historians call it, to a politics of a wider democracy. A politics of deference, for instance, John Adams, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, they did not go out and actively campaign for the presidency. They might issue a letter now and again or a response to another letter, but they would allow their friends and political associates to campaign for them and to try to drum up support for them. This is going to change, whereby politicians are going to become much more face-to-face with the people, as opposed to being ostensibly disinterested in the outcome of an election. They're going to be more active campaigning. So we're moving from a politics of deference to a politics of active democracy in this early republic. I want you to remember these ideas of republicanism: civic virtue, disinterested service, pretending that you're not interested in the outcome of an election, that you will serve if called upon by the people. Now, when we talk about this culture of honor, I think it's significant because it represents an extra legal system, an extra legal code of behavior. It's reserved for society's elite. By extra legal, I meaning outside the law, that these elite political leaders of the early republic could do things, including shoot each other, with some impunity. So this is a system to regulate elite behavior that's not available to the mass public. I'm going to quote here from Joanna Freeman's excellent book called Affairs of Honor. I'm going to quote here to give you an idea. Her description is quite good. Quote, "The culture of honor was a source of stability in this contested political landscape. Democratic politicking shook the earth beneath the feet of those accustomed to leadership. The tradition-bound culture of honor provided solid ground, virtually defining genteel status. Gentlemen restrained their passions and controlled their words. Their manners were refined and their carriage easy. They were men of integrity and honesty, whose promises could be trusted. Their word was their bond." All these things were at the heart of the culture of honor, or the code of honor, which set a standard of conduct and provided a controlled means for handling the violation of these codes. Its ethic limited and defined acceptable behavior. Its rites and rituals displayed superiority of character through time-honored traditions recognized the world over. Far more than directives for negotiating a duel, the code of honor was a way of life, particularly in a nation lacking an established aristocracy. This culture of honor was a crucial proving ground for the political elite. Now, how do we control the behavior of the political leadership through this code of honor? I want to talk here about a grammar of political combat, tools, non-lethal weapons that included gossip, broadsides, pamphlets, newspapers, and then finally dueling, which obviously is lethal. There are certain fighting words that, if used, could land you in trouble with a political opponent. Certain slurs were off limits, and these seem tame by our standards today, but in the early republic, these were fighting words. Rascal, if you called your political opponent a rascal, that indicates low character. A scoundrel would do the same thing. A liar, men of honor do not lie, their word is their bond. If you called a man a coward, that was certainly an invitation to a fight. Men of honor are not cowards. They like to display their disinterest in death. I remember Alexander Hamilton repeatedly putting himself under fire at the siege of Yorktown in 1781 to demonstrate his courage and to establish himself as an honorable gentleman. This is my favorite of these fighting words, puppy. If you called your opponent a puppy, you can expect a response. A puppy being a harmless, ineffectual creature. As lovable as they are, men of honor are not puppies. Honor is reputation, and reputation, of course, is established in public among one's peers and followers. It sort of sets your place in the hierarchy of public life. Character, of course, this refers to virtues and vices. Fame. Fame is achieved through public service, just as I mentioned with Hamilton leading these rather dangerous, reckless charges during the siege of Yorktown in public so that men can see and discuss his fame in later times. Hamilton, for instance, in the Federalist numbers 69 and 70, wrote that only personal responsibility before the eyes of the public, the threat of dishonor before an ever-vigilant audience, could restrain self-serving, ambitious politicians. And this, of course, is the type of charge that Hamilton will level at Aaron Burr, that he was unrestrained in his pursuit of power, and that he sought power not for the national good, but for his own personal glory. Let's talk about these non-lethal weapons used by men of honor. Gossip. Gossip should not be written. If gossip is written, it lends or it opens the purveyor of the gossip to charges of slander. Gossip is an effective political tool, however. You may recall that Thomas Jefferson was a renowned inventor. He invented the Lazy Susan. Legend has it he invented the Lazy Susan to keep servants out of the dining room when he was discussing political matters with his associates. He feared that a servant might have loose lips and might repeat what he heard during dinner, perhaps to an opponent of Jefferson. So the Lazy Susan allowed the gentlemen at the table to serve themselves. The dumbwaiter, also, same idea. Now, gossip, again, the reputation of the gossiper counted for much. A man of high standing, his gossip should be believable and credible. A man of low standing, by definition, could be a liar, and his credibility at stake. You didn't reveal the source of your gossip without permission. This seems strange in our day and time with the social media as it is, but gossip does start somewhere, and it does have you can track it, and so this is supposed to be kept secret at each stop. Undisclosed disclosure amounted to gossiping about a friend. This, of course, is viewed as a hostile act. A man should show no malice when gossiping. Conspicuous hostility is bad politics because it shows that you are distinctly interested in the outcome as opposed to the Republican idea of disinterest. Gossip, of course, creates networks of friends and associates and political alliances. Now, let me talk about another type of non-lethal weapon. And these are broadsides. Broadside, think of it as you see modern-day graffiti on the sides of buildings. You see them on the sides of railroad cars as they go by. A broadside is much like this. It's a condemnation of an opponent's political program. advertised for the public to see it. Let me see if I can find some examples here. If a broadside is issued against you, you can be said to have been posted. A posted offender was either too low or cowardly to duel, and with no other way to redeem his reputation, the wounded party was entitled to post his offender with broadsides tacked up in public spaces. So you could tack it up on a tree if necessary. Here's an example. When Virginia Representative John Randolph refused a challenge from General James Wilkerson, declaring that, quote, he would not reduce himself to Wilkerson's level. Wilkerson posted Randolph in the newspapers with contemptible language. So broadsides are a way of condemning your opponent in public. The public can see these messages. Pamphlets. Men of honor would issue pamphlets attacking their political opponents. And again, an attack on an opponent's political program was generally acceptable. It's when the attack goes to personal attacks. Then you can cross the line and find yourself in being confronted with the code of honor. Defense pamphlets were a public means of silencing private conversation, removing gossip from the shadows and exposing it as malicious lies. Pamphlets could be widely disseminated, cheaply produced. Pamphlets demanded the greatest risk, since the authority of the author's name and reputation would now be open to question. Pamphlets should appear passive and detached to be effective. Only then might these personal pleas seem like objective historical fact instead of interested political outcome. One example of how not to, there's two examples actually. Hamilton's pamphlet, the title called Letter Concerning the Public Conduct and Character of John Adams. This was an open attack on the president, and it backfired because Hamilton appeared to be entrenched. His interest was entrenched in this matter, and by becoming personally interested in the outcome, Hamilton diminished his effectiveness. In other words, he was not cool, he was not detached, he was not neutral in his approach. He was openly emotional and hostile. Hamilton's letter sounded more like a, quote, vindictive personal assault than a rational defense. Again, the lack of a disinterest diminished Hamilton's effort. And of course, finally, we come to a lethal method of dueling to settle affairs of honor. The language of honor is easily recognizable to these men when they receive a letter. Here is an example, Alexander Hamilton and James Monroe in a conflict, and the dance of honor begins here, and you can see it. Quote, Mr. Hamilton requests an interview. They never use the word duel. They always use the word interview. Mr. Hamilton requests an interview with Mr. Monroe at any hour tomorrow, which may be convenient to him. Particular reasons will induce him to bring with him a friend to be present at what may pass. This friend who should be present is called a second. The two men who may have to carry this code of honor all the way to the killing ground, these are the principals. The seconds will do the negotiating, determining where the duel will be fought, if a doctor should be present, what type of weapons are to be used, and that sort of thing. So let me draw some quick conclusions here to this culture of honor. This is cultural history. This is the emergence of a type of history that is not so much concerned with the ongoing political narrative. It's more concerned with the meaning of things, and requires a little bit more imagination. Another good conclusion here, the extra-legal system of justice, which of course will be eliminated as we move further into the 19th century. And in our next lecture, I want to talk about a specific duel, the most famous of them, and that's of course between Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr in 1804. Thank you.